The first question in today's mailbag episode comes from Joe Duck on Twitter asking, we have a lot more early commits in this class. How confident are we feeling their commitments are locked in with some taking other visits and rising in the rankings? So Oregon's class right now, top 10 class in the 2024 recruiting rankings. And they only have 5 commits. I mean, it doesn't seem like that many, but I feel like having a class that's that highly ranked with only 5 commits speaks to the quality and the caliber of each commitment that the Ducks have been able to land so far in the 2024 class. Just to get people caught up to speed, if you don't know much about Oregon's recruiting class in 2024, currently at 5 verbal commitments, like I mentioned, with wide receiver Tyson Denmark out of Philadelphia, serving as the main headliner of the bunch. Jordan Anderson out of Newport Harbor. He's a wide receiver out here in my neck of the woods in Southern California. He's committed to Oregon. And then you also have Fox Crater, the Washington offensive lineman who's seen his stock skyrocket on the recruiting trail. AJ Pugliano, the in-state tight end, and edge rusher Jackson Jones out of Yuma, Arizona. So more or less, how are we feeling that these guys are locked in? I can tell you from off the rip that from my conversations with Jackson Jones, he told me that he's locked into Oregon. He was in Eugene just a couple weeks ago for a visit, and it was his first trip as a committed prospect for Dan Lanning in the 2024 recruiting class. So that was a big visit. You know how kind of things went with him. He was committed to Washington for a while, and then he decommitted from Washington, took that visit to Oregon, and things were pretty much wrapped up. So Jackson Jones is probably the guy I'm most confident in right now because he told me that he was locked in. But, nothing's said and done until you get that signature on the dotted line on the national letter of intent. And then you also have AJ Pugliano, who I mentioned earlier. He's an in-state tight end. I feel a little bit more confident about him being pretty locked in with his commitment. He was the first 2024 recruit to commit to Oregon. So I think that you kind of have more chance of holding a long-term commitment from a guy who's in-state out there in North Medford. So I feel good about those guys. But these other guys that are towards the top of the class, I think could definitely emerge as guys are going to have to battle for that. I wouldn't say aren't locked in necessarily, but they're still keeping their options open, right? That's kind of what a lot of recruits do now, especially if you're getting attention from a lot of different schools. So starting off with Fox Crater from Evergreen High School in Vancouver, Washington. Fox Crater is a top offensive line commit in the 2024 class. Let me actually go ahead and see if I can get some highlights up here. Just take this podcast to a new level. I always feel like it helps to have highlights on of, the player that I'm talking about. So let me just go ahead and get that up here. If you guys can just give me a second. I'm going to move some windows around here so I can make sure to get that video up for you guys. All right, here we go. Share screen, get these highlights up. All right, here's Fox Crater, the offensive tackle commit for Oregon. So if you guys know about Fox Crater, he's been blowing up on the recruiting trail this spring. Lots of big offers coming in from Georgia, Texas A&M, Auburn. Those are some of the big schools that have entered the recruitment for Crater. But the interesting thing with him is that a lot of people thought that him taking other visits was because Adrian Clem left to take the job with the Patriots. But he told me when I talked to him that that wasn't the reason that he was taking other trips. He's just kind of doing his homework, doing his due diligence, making sure that Oregon's the place for him. But he was also in town last weekend, so he got to have some face-to-face time, one-on-one time with Alik Terry. So important to meet your future position coach. And I know that Oregon's doing a good job of keeping those relationships going. He already has really strong relationships with other members of the Oregon staff. That's another thing you have to keep in mind here when coaches move, is that Dan Lanning and the rest of the staff, they're not just doing, okay, hey, you have this is like, Tosh, you're going to be the only person that recruits this guy. It's always a team effort, so that when you have movement on your staff, it's not just like you're left standing there like, well, what do we do now? No, you have relationships with multiple guys. So I think Fox Crater, he looks solid right now in terms of just where things are at. He told me he's not going to throw away months and months of, recruiting and relationship building just because some new schools are offering and new schools are getting visits from him. But, kind of like I said with some of these top tier guys in Oregon's 2024 class, you got to stay on them. You got to stay recruiting them, making them feel like a priority, keeping those relationships really strong. So I think the visits that Fox Creator is taking are definitely going to be really important ones for him and his recruitment. But fortunately for the Ducks, they do have geography on their side here. So it's a really easy trip to get from Vancouver, Washington to Eugene. So they can get him back on campus with relative ease. So there's a long way to go between now and signing day in December. But I'm feeling good about where Oregon is with Fox Creator right now, even given the new visits that he's going to be taking, especially those to the SEC. I know those are the ones that kind of tend to grab a lot of people's attention. All right, let's switch up the highlights here as we talk about our next guy. We're going to be talking about Jordan Anderson. All right, let's see here. Sometimes highlights are so hard to find. I don't know why it's always like that. I don't know why it has to be like that. But yeah, Jordan Anderson is a very, very, very talented wide receiver in the 2024 class out of Southern California, Newport Harbor. He is someone who's been committed to Oregon since December. He routinely shows up and competes against the best talent in the country, winning the wide receiver MVP award at the Rivals LA camp not too long ago. But he's still, hearing from some schools. I know he wants to get out to the SEC. I think Colorado is another school that's stayed in the mix. I know that USC is going to be a school that stays in the mix. And I think that USC would probably be, probably one of the top contenders just because he's from Southern California. He's from the LA area, transferring from Long Beach, Milliken to Newport Harbor, hometown of Inglewood, California. So anytime you have top offensive guys in the Southern California area, USC is going to stay in the picture. They're going to do everything they can to stay in the mix. So I think that USC is a school to watch. Colorado is a school to watch. But fortunately, Anderson has talked also about wanting to get back out to Oregon. I know he has a really strong relationship with Junior Adams. So I wouldn't say that it's, like a shaky situation at all. I think I feel good about where Oregon's at with Jordan Anderson in terms of, getting out to see him on the road. I'm sure they'll stop by during the spring evaluation period in May, get him on campus for a spring practice in April just to make sure things are solid. So he's a guy who's going to continue to take more visits, but I think you can expect that with a lot of recruits because they want to make sure that they're making the decision that is best for them. But Jordan Anderson is the best wide receiver. A lot of people want to say on the West Coast, in California, in Los Angeles. But you also have Aaron Butler out of Calabasas, who is an elite wide receiver, has some of the craziest tape I've ever seen, has Oregon in his top 4 or top 5, I want to say, and it looks like he's going to be taking some visits before too long. I know that Alabama and Georgia are also heavily involved in that recruitment, but feeling good about where things are at with Jordan Anderson right now. He's a guy that I get to see a pretty good amount out here in Southern California, so really top tier guy that's going to continue to get a lot of attention. We could even see some more big offers come. You never know. But I think that, it's not necessarily a commit that I think that Oregon fans should worry about. Have one more guy we're going to talk about in the 2024 class, and then we will continue on with our next question in the mailbag episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. So the next guy we're talking about is Tyson Denmark out of Roman Catholic High School in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He committed to Oregon around the Thanksgiving time last year. So he was a guy that I really didn't know about too much. I think he'd been on Oregon's radar for a while, but the Northeast isn't an area that Oregon has recruited super heavily in the past, but this guy is different. Tyson Denmark is one of the most polished wide receivers, polished route runners you're going to find, elite athleticism, elite route runner, playmaker. And he is the face of the Roman Catholic offense, and he is the guy in the state of Pennsylvania. And what comes with that is you have schools like Penn State, Ohio State that are going to stay involved here. And that's why I think it was a bit of a surprise when he committed to Oregon. And I know that those schools, Penn State and Ohio State specifically, are going to want to stay involved in this recruitment, stay active. They have geography on their side, so it's an easy trip if they want to try to get him out for a visit. So again, what I'm trying to drive home here with these guys, especially the guys in the top top half of Oregon's class is that they're going to have to work hard. This staff is to keep these guys committed, keep them in the fold, and ultimately make sure that they hang on to their commitment throughout their senior season, throughout the summer, and what's ahead. Because things are going to ramp up for sure on the recruiting trail here in the spring, here in the summer. This is when the heavy lifting happens. So 5 commits might seem like a lot right now, but if Oregon does everything they want and they're supposed to, they should have this 2024 wrapped up, this 2024 class wrapped up for the most part by the end of the summer. By the time the season rolls around, they usually have that Saturday Night Live camp near the end of July, and maybe you can get some commits coming out of that. So that's definitely a really important window to keep monitoring here for Oregon. But again, with Tyson Denmark, there's still going to be schools that stay involved. But I think I feel good about where Oregon stands right now with his commitment.